Okay, here we're going to do the first graphing example. So, when you start to graph a parabola, you are going to want to try to locate the vertex first, because on a graph, if your parabola is sitting over here, and all you were to do were to choose points -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2, and we were only to plug in these values in your equation, you would only see this part of the graph. You wouldn't see this part of the graph, so you would never notice that it actually is U-shaped. You would only see this increasing, increasing, increasing. So, first thing you do is find your vertex. So what's your vertex here? Well, your vertex, we know, was HK, right? The vertex was H comma K. And you might recall from the notes that H is going to be the opposite sign. The X coordinate's the opposite sign. So since this is +3, this is -3. And then the K is what's added on, which in this case is nothing. So nothing would be 0, so your vertex is at -3, 0. So if we go 1, 2, 3, 0, this point here is your vertex. Okay? Now, we learned also that the value of A will tell you which way it opens. In this case, we have a +1 out in front, so positive opens up, so we know this should open up. So here's our vertex, and it opens up. Now, what we need are some more points. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a T-chart, an X and Y table, and because I want a couple points on this side and a couple points on this side, I'm going to put my vertex in the middle. So this here, again, is your vertex. And I'm going to put that in the middle. Now I want a couple x's smaller than -3, -4, -5, and a couple x's bigger, -2, -1. And then I need to find their y values. Well, you find the y values by plugging them in. So let me plug -5 in. -5 plus 3 is -2. -2 squared gets you +4. Now we plug the -4 in. -4 plus 3 is -1. Square -1, you get +1. Now let's plug in -2. -2 plus 3 is 1. 1 squared is 1. And then plug in -1. -1 plus 3 is 2. 2 squared is 4. And you should notice here that the y values pair up again, just like they did here when we went over these notes earlier. All the y values pair up. On each side of the vertex, they all pair up. It goes 1, 4, 9, 1, 4, 9 on each side. So on this, we got 1, 4, 1, 4. They pair up. So now we're just ready to plot. So at -5, we're at +4. 1, 2, 3, 4. At -4, we're at +1. And then because of symmetry, we know here when we get to -2, oh, that's got to be on the other side. And -1, oh, that's got to be at the same level there. So here's our parabola. Okay. We can also go ahead and draw in our axis of symmetry. So our axis of symmetry is this vertical line, and the equation of that vertical line is x equals whatever the x coordinate is that we're on, which is 1, 2, 3, -3. Okay. So now we've got our first parabola sketched. Okay. Now let's move to a second one. Here again we've got y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. So we need our vertex. Well, here we don't see any parentheses. Well, what would h have to be if there's no parentheses? Well, x minus what number just gets you x? Well, that would be 0. So your vertex on this one, the h is actually 0. Now what's the k? What's added on here at the end? Oh, that's +3. So that's +3. So on this one, our vertex is at 0, 1, 2, 3. So here's our vertex. Now we make our table of values. x and y. We put our vertex in the middle, 0, 3. Again, this is our vertex. Now we need a couple smaller, negative 1, negative 2. And we need a couple bigger, 1 and 2. We plug in our points. I normally plug in the positives because they're easier to work with, and then I just use the symmetry to get the other ones. So if I plug in 1, 1 squared is 1. 1 times negative 5 is negative 5, plus 3 is negative 2. Then if I plug in a 2 here, 2 squared is 4. 4 times negative 5 is negative 20, plus 3 is negative 17. Wow, that's a really small number. Well, let's go back to our equation here. This is negative, our a is negative, so it should be opening down, and it looks like we keep getting further and further and further negative. And since this is a 5, this should be really narrow, which means this should go down very quickly. And it does. So if positive 1 is negative 2, then negative 1 here should be also negative 2. If positive 2 is negative 17, then this should be negative 17. Now we won't be able to graph the negative 17s because they're off the graph, but we can go ahead and plot the negative 1, which is at negative 2, and positive 1 is also at negative 2. So this opens down. And then we can throw in our axis of symmetry, which in this case is the line x equals 0. Okay? So that's doing the graphs the old-fashioned way. On number 3, I'll show you how to use a graphing calculator.